Hello, everyone. Thank you for welcome to this conversation with Planetiers and ModaLisboa. We are happy to welcome you to this conversation about fashion and the reality in Portugal. I am here. I would like to introduce you to my guests today. I have João Maia, Director of APICCAPS, Marlene Oliveira, Head of International Unit from CENIT, Ricardo Preto, the creative director and designer at his own brand, Alfredo Oróbio, CEO from AWAYTOMARS, Joana Duarte, CEO and designer from BEHÉN, and Constança Entrudo, creative director and designer at her own brand. My name is Joana Jorge. I am from Modalisboa. I will be your host today. And we just thought that the Planetiers would be the right moment to talk a little bit about fashion and how the challenges that are that the fashion industry is facing nowadays. There's so much to do and still so many options that we need that need to be rethought. So many processes that can be changed. The industry, I would say, has been slowly addressing some questions. I see that some brands are addressing questions earlier than others, and a lot of the main brands and industry is taking more time to consider the problems that we have that are global. And as an industry, of course, we are becoming more aware that it is urgent, that we need to change the process that we work with. We need to change the practices. We need to change how we talk to the consumer and how the consumer can buy into fashion in better ways and in more responsible ways. So I would say we are living exciting times now when designers and industries are really taking these urgent matters and the emergency climate as a really main focus for their work, and they're trying to come up with different solutions and different ways of contributing in a positive way for a better industry in the future. So I'm very happy to have these guests. They are all activists somehow, and they are all within their work and the scope of their companies. They are making a difference on every day. That's how we make a better future. So I would like to introduce Constança Entrudo. And Constança, welcome. I would like to ask you, if you could share a little bit how the idea of sustainability is a reality in your company, and how is that making you think in a different way?
So I would say sustainability is like the core of my company, of my brand, of my work. Since before I even considered creating a brand and going into fashion, like my whole work was about this technique that I created, and that's how then I started my brand using a sustainable technique that I've been developing since university in London, which is a method of like where I've used threads and yarns from like scraps from factories, at that time from my college. So this is how like my work started getting known as. And then I became a brand somehow. So it has always been the main issue and a major concern. And as the brand then, as I then started, because I was doing fabrics for interiors, for loads of purposes, and so then and materials, all sustainable. And then I decided to open a brand. So when I decided to go into fashion, then another type of sustainability then kind of came up, which is social sustainability, which I think it's also very important to talk about, and that I know that other people in this talk, like Joana, will then talk further about that. But I just feel like it became something else and joined the two worlds. So my base technique, which was all made with sustainable materials, with less water and somehow electricity, though that's the main challenge. And then I started thinking, as I'm going into fashion, how can I make a change and become an activist, as you mentioned before. And that's how then I joined the two ways of doing sustainability and practicing sustainability through making genderless collections, through like having models of any color and shape and however you want to call it, and through changing mentality, especially in a country like Portugal, step by step, where I'm based at the moment. So I just think that those two types of sustainability are very important to mention. And
so in a way, you're talking about sourcing your material, and that is one of the key things for you. But also you talked about genderless collection, and how is that in a way in a more sustainable approach? How do you see that, the genderless, or you have you present your collection with a normal season, but how is the genderless? How does that inform your collection?
That's just part of a process that I don't even think about, but then when I see the result, it kind of makes sense, because since I'm a textile designer, I don't work within the body. So I make the fabrics and then I put them onto someone, whoever that person is, man or woman, so or whatever. So what happens when I talk about social sustainability, it's more in a way like I'm presenting my collections in a country that it's still very highly conservative, and that there's a lot of work to be done, and all those issues are now being talked. And I just think through making genderless collections, I then challenge people to kind of think and to discuss further, which I have heard loads of comments and I've heard loads of arguments and discussions. And I think that's also sustainability in a way, and that's the point I wanted to make with that.
Absolutely. And how do you find that that's informing, in a way, your clients and the market, but also your suppliers, the industry that you work with? You're questioning and thinking and challenging both ends?
I think because my brand is quite recent, it has 2 years, and then I've always started off as this. So I just think people, the minute they've seen it, like they knew what it was, and they don't question very much that, considering, you know, it wasn't a shift or something. It wasn't something that I thought through.
Okay, thank you. So I would then, we're talking about sustainability and responsibility, of course, and there's, it is a global concept that has so many perspectives. And so I would pass the word to Joana. And to Joana, would you tell us a little bit about, you're really an emerging brand, and with many ideas and new ideas around this idea of sustainability and responsibility. Would you tell us a little bit about your project, and how does it challenge the mainstream status quo?
Yeah, hi Joana, hi everyone. So most of you already heard about my project, but so basically at BEHÉN, I tried to create a project that started as an answer to the actual problem. So when I created a project, I was a student, so I was thinking, how can I, as a student, create something that can actually have an impact, both environmental and social impact, as Constança also mentioned. So basically, BEHÉN, we work only with the antique textiles, so from bed covers, tablecloths, and other antique textiles. But we also work with communities. Most of all, they live in Portugal. So this is in partnership with APICCAPS Foundation. And so basically, those communities are involved in the production part as well. So for me, sustainability is a big, like a big bubble of things. So it's not just about the materials, it's not just about the production. It is also, how can you have a project that can actually and directly contribute to communities? Because fashion, I mean, we cannot just be inspired by something and not actually contribute to the problem. So so it was basically thought in that way. How can I directly contribute? Like a percentage of the sales contribute to Syrian children, to their education. So we also try to involve other projects as well, and other associations and foundations. We worked with Humana as well to use wedding dresses from the 80s. So we try to bring as many people as possible, because I truly believe that collaboration is the key. We cannot change the world alone. Everyone has ideas, everyone can contribute. So this is just one solution. There are many others.
So that is clearly in the main focus of your project. It's really something that is driving the development of the brand. And how all of those elements and associations, how do they come around your project, and how do you manage that? How can you make a collection and produce a collection of garments with so many different elements, with so many different teams and agents around you?
Yeah,
is that a confusion, or is it an added value?
Yeah, it's an added value for sure, but it's a challenge, because in terms of production, I don't work with factories, and they are, I mean, these women are just, some of them just start learning how to sew, so it takes a lot of control in terms of quality control, and in terms of time, you have to always be with them. So it's different in terms of how it works. I mean, for example, for other designers, it's not that intense, I imagine. But I think it's part of the process, because I get to know them, and I have the opportunity to hear their stories, and to learn so much about their cultures. And I think that's also a big part for my creative process as well. It's the people behind, and what can I learn from them, even though it's a challenge, a really big challenge.
So after you have shown just your second collection, how do you see, how are you improving processes? How do you see, are you making compromises? How do you see the upcoming season?
No, I'm not making compromises, at least for now. And now I think I have time to explore and to think about my original idea, and to see what I can do as transparent as possible and as rough as possible. Mm-hmm. But obviously there will be a time where I have to think twice, and I have to think differently. But that's part of it. So now I just have time to explore and to see what I can do, if it's really contributing. Because one thing is that if we think that a project can contribute, and another thing if it really contributes to something. So that's really important for me, to actually see if my project can change the people's life that are involved in the production. If I can create more job opportunities, if I can improve their children's life, things like that are a big part for me. So if I tick those boxes, then I can start like improving other things.
So it's really about the impact. Good luck with your project and everything. Thank you, Joana. Alfredo, would you tell us a little bit about Away to Mars, and how it all started, and where you are at the moment?
Thanks so much for having me, Joana. It's great to share some of the other side of this story. So I'm not a designer. I never studied design. I studied economics, and my master's was about trying to understand how people were using social media and social platforms to connect and to cultivate creativity online. And basically what we saw, this was back in 2015, 2014, we saw huge potential of data, like very amazing creative people around the globe sharing amazing designs, amazing ideas for fashion, but all these ideas and all this innovation got lost in this online mess. So basically our idea was to create a place, like a social network where people could cultivate this creativity, so share those ideas, work together, and propose innovation in design. So this was back to 2015 when we launched our first beta collection, and was very interesting to see the results and how the platform developed. We have now 20,000 designers from all over the globe, and people work together on selected tasks. So we've been working with big brands like Missoni and Melissa and Kellogg's and Walmart company. And what we are now on a shift, on a very interesting mission to not just innovate and not just like propose collaboration and propose co-creation, but also educate this designer. The designer is the decision maker on the sustainability. So we need to give this designer enough knowledge in circularity, in materials, in design, so he can propose different ways and different methods when he's creating with his peers and creating with a brand. So what we are developing now, and is our new project that we've been developing for 6 months now, is a 24 months development route. We are bringing some elements of AI into the design process. So basically, we're going to have some algorithms working side by side with the designer. We're not trying to replace the designer with a computer or with a robot, but we want to give the designer some new arms so he can innovate and bring more. Actually, basically, use AI and use the algorithm to do the boring stuff. So like try to find ways of like doing a new pattern cut or like experimenting new fabrics in a pattern, etc. And even like generating new styles using a database or a data set that you bring into the game. So it's an experiment, and I think that's quite interesting here. Because fashion is so complex. This entire chain is so complex and so is full of like people, and you have the farmer, the spinner, the factory, the mill, the designer, the manufacturer, and we have to be able to think on this like 360 vision and apply like all these little pieces of transparency, sustainability, so we can work in this entire universe of fashion. It's not as easy as on the food industry, because it's quite controlled and it's quite easy to track, but fashion is much more complex, and it demands much more action and much more technology and education. I think education is the key base for everything. Education, not just in the designers, but the consumers and people who buys. I have a very interesting, not very interesting case, but I have friends that are not in the industry, and they don't know why it's bad buying a €3 t-shirt. And once you tell them like how much it costs to create a pattern, to spin a thread, and then they start realizing that someone is losing money in that thread. And I think that's the main. Or for me, it's the main challenge for AWAYTOMARS is not to become a designing platform, but it's also to become an education tool for new and upcoming designers.
No, I was wondering that because actually you're growing with a really strong identity of community and as designers, but also you really you have a very close relationship with your audience somehow. It's a very virtual, very digital way of doing things. And I was wondering if this idea of education, if you're finding that it is also working with your community of designers, how do you see changes coming up from all those things you mentioned in terms of your community? Are they more open? Are they more? Do you find that there's shifts in what they deliver, in what they, in the challenges that they bring to you? How is it working? How is it evolving this community?
Yeah, I think it's not only is they are learning, they are teaching us a lot of stuff, and it's a cross learning way. And we can see from what happened, like from 4 years to now, we thought about all our supply chain as well, and how we work and how we manufacture our pieces. So basically, since 3 seasons ago, we banned all synthetics fibers from our collections, and this was something that came from the platform, came from the users, and people were worried about biodegradable materials and how we were applying that, and the PVCs we're using, and things like that. So I think that's very interesting for not just for us, but for any company and any designer and any brand, is to learn from other designers, but also from the consumers. And I think this exchange that sometimes doesn't exist, because traditional fashion brands is very top to bottom. The designer, the head designer, tells his dream and his ideas and his universe. Sometimes you don't have this voice and this conversation with the consumer and with other people that are doing fantastic things around the globe. So what we want to create is a forum where people can learn with each other and share ideas, share innovation, and work together to move forward. Yeah,
it's very exciting. Thank you, Alfredo. I would like to talk with Marlene now, who will give us a really different perspective. So really the side of the industry and how these topics that everyone is dealing in different ways. How is the industry looking into this?
Hi everyone. Thank you, Joana and Modalisboa, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be amongst such Portuguese talented designers, together with João Maia from the Portuguese Shoes Association. We all agree that we live in a time where global fashion market is rapidly changing, and the unknown is probably the only certain thing we have, as strangely as it may seem. And the Portuguese fashion industry is caught in between these uncertain times. Needless to say that we are known for our quality, our short lead times, our competitive rates. Not everyone knows that Portugal is also very strong in engineering and product design. In fact, the Portuguese fashion industry provides all the steps of the chain of production with a sophisticated manufacturing process. Nevertheless, we believe that all these features can work alongside with sustainability, and that's the topic that brings us all here. We can honestly say that the industry is already addressing this topic, as Joana said, not at the fastest pace we would like to see it, but change is happening. Let me remind you that the Portuguese industry is based on family businesses. It has a strong tradition rooted in entrepreneurial families that built factories and created their own brands, but they are now in a transitional process. And this new generation of businessmen, their sons and daughters, are now bringing into the factories new procedures, new technologies, and mostly a more aware and conscious perspective on the fashion business. We are now moving from the fast fashion concept to a more niche-oriented business, from large quantities to small orders, consuming less raw materials, ideally generated with ethic and environmentally friendly procedures, and of course, originating less stock. But let us not forget that the concept of fast fashion, when it started, also meant a democratization of fashion. It is no secret that in the 90s, Portugal built its industry as a way to respond to the growing demand of a big fashion distribution group, which we all know. And because of our ability to quick respond, fashion was spread throughout the global market at low prices, and therefore the fashion product was made available to every consumer. But things are changing, and the sustainability issues are being addressed for some time now. In fact, ANIVEC, the Portuguese Association for Apparel and Clothing Manufacturers, together with Inditex, started a discussion group back in 2011 to tackle the social and environmental issues, and changes are being gradually implemented. As far as energy production and use are concerned, we are proud to say that we are amongst the most efficient countries, and for quite some time now, we comply with the strictest European legislation. In fact, we have numerous examples of companies that use 40 to 50% of renewable energy sources at the same time that they produce 30% of their own energy needs with solar panels. It meant big investments, but the industry is now more aware of the impact on the environment such choices can have, and let's be blunt, on the savings that can be achieved. In terms of human resources, we know that the fashion production workforce is mostly run by women, but the industry has already included measures to better address the balance between work versus personal life, and by providing transportation, by having gyms inside some factories, by providing training programs, by helping small production units based on local communities, and by providing special care for the employees as far as the new COVID's protective measures are concerned. But what is being the main driver of change is consumer behavior, of course. Even before COVID, the fashion industry was already perceiving this shift and was trying to come up with the best way to respond to it. But I guess the 5-year planning that the industry was drawing was abruptly cut in short. Consumers now look for trusted brands, and trust and transparency is something that now is added to a brand's perceived value. Consumers look for this. Consumers look for brands with an ethic positioning, brands that strongly communicate their commitment to people and to the planet. So trust and transparency are truly important purchasing factors. And being totally aware of this, the Portuguese textile and apparel industry is in between models. The one we were built upon, the fast fashion model, and this new model that was highly accelerated by COVID, and which we are still not sure how it will be designed, how it will evolve. So this is the crucial question for the industry. But there are things that we are now more convinced of and Portugal can benefit from, which is the proximity sourcing, for example. Brands and consumers tend to look for reliable, close suppliers, meaning less carbon emissions, more trust, more transparency. And brands, they want to conquer this eco status. They don't want to fall into the so-called eco shame and being accused of greenwashing. In fact, the challenge is for the designers. It should all start from the eco design. Our designers assume here a paramount role because the design must embrace the sustainability principles from the very beginning when they choose raw materials, as Constança and Joana mentioned. And in fact, we all know how expensive it is and sometimes even impossible to recycle a finished product. So we must avoid the cost of dealing with this attempt of recycling a garment at the end of its product life cycle. Basically, we can all do our share at every step of the way. So the challenge for the industry is facing now is being in between models, providing fashion products in a sustainable manner, but still be profitable enough to keep companies running, to provide jobs, to assure local communities their income, and to provide for families' well-being, of course. And so the industry is very much engaged in these uncertain times, but I'm sure we will all succeed in the most conscious way.
Like, no, it sounds very exciting. Of course, I mean the Portuguese industry. It's known for being so responsible and actually being quite upfront in terms of the ethics and how we look after the workers and the whole as a system. But it is exciting to hear that so many changes are being made already. I'm sure that some of the factories are more in front of these changes that need. It needs some courage as well to implement so many, because it's really, you have to consider, of course, you have to be worried about profit and being efficient and being profitable, but at the same time you need to be aware that now is a time for changing, because later on it will be too late. Now you have to change. You have to be courage and address the change and prepare for the future. So very, it's great to hear that things are moving and that actually so many phases of the process are being addressed. So very exciting. And so I'd like to talk to Ricardo. Welcome. Would be nice to hear how is this, I mean, your brand is established, it's more mature brand, and how is and sustainability somehow it came through. It came in the process whilst you already established and had an up and running brand. How are these topics touching your brand, and how are they making changes apply in the way you do things? Ricardo, tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Hi everyone, and thank you for this invitation, Joana. And well, I was listening to Marlene and all of my colleagues, and makes all the sense what we are speaking now. My brand is older, so it's not so easy to make this shift immediately. Mm-hmm. If we are creating a brand, a new brand, obviously you already come with all these values. When I start, my first worry was about giving something special, about shape, about a lifestyle, a philosophy. But when I start about thinking sustainability, so I understand that my brand was always sustainable. Why? Because we are a very small company. Basically, I work for these last years mostly with the same fabrics. Why? Because we understand the global consumer style preferences. And that was exactly when you focus on that and you understand what you want to sell and what the people want to buy, and you organize your brand by a lifestyle, it's easier. You don't produce so many garbage because you have a study. Even Alfredo was speaking about this algorithm thing, and so this is very important. Second, in my brand and the other private brands that I do, we had a big knowledge about fabrics. So we work the fabrics as a pyramid. So even if we buy more fabrics and we don't use it all and stay in our suppliers, we know for sure that on the next season we're gonna use it. So it's very economical and profit. At the same time, we don't do so many things. Obviously, the collections are done season after season with a big analysis. What we sell, what we don't sell, what was our image maker who sold more, how it is our long terms. In Ricardo Preto, we really care about long-term pieces. I think it's very important you have pieces that stay in your wardrobe for many seasons. So, and we try to do with this a fair price. So, and we don't have too many sales, because we know if we don't sell on that season, we can carry it over for the next season. And so it's very important. These last years we are putting some eco fabrics obviously, when we choose the fabrics and we work with that polyester, we search with our suppliers in Portugal and in Italy and in Philippines nowadays, because we have some private brands that we do only there, kilometer zero. So and how we work there, we work with the community. I work with the native fabrics. I involve a lot of associations, and it's been a success even before COVID. Obviously now we have to do a different shapes, something much more comfortable. That's exactly how we are working. And we try to educate our customers, but we don't try to make our customers have another problem. The customers already have so much in the shoulders of them. So how we do this? We train, we give trainings to our sales associates. So the sales associate, when they are doing a sale, they can explain this material, how it's done, how many pieces we did. So it's easier and it's soft. Like I said, Ricardo, Preto have 14 years old. I cannot swift immediately. And I was listening, Marlene, Portuguese industry are very old. Making this swift, it's a big challenge. And I believe they are doing well. They are doing well. Before I've been in Asia, I was working in north of Portugal, and I saw so many changes already. I believe nowadays it's much better. But 5 years ago, they were already swifting to this direction. So what we are doing right now, it's care about the fabrics, still care about the fabrics and the choices of our materials, make a deep analysis of global consumer style preferences, because for us it's very important, because it's easy to make the production without excess. So basically, it's what we are doing. We reduce the quantities of SKUs. Suddenly, the collection looks for us huge, because we had, instead of only have 2 seasons, suddenly we have 4 seasons.
Absolutely.
With capsules. Suddenly, you are pressed by this fashion machine to do a lot of capsules. It's like every month you have to deliver on sales floor new things. We are using a method that allowed us to produce less, to make less colors even. It's the combination and the training and the deliveries on the sales floor that change.
Absolutely. I would say that is one of the challenges, to bring novelty, because fashion needs that, demands that, and the client demands that, but at the same time, keeping it on the right scale. I think you mentioned something that for me it's also very interesting, which is the kilometers. Fashion travels the world. Majority of the consumers are not aware of that. And actually that is one of the hidden things that actually it can make so much difference if your garment, if your fabric and your garment is produced locally and you deliver locally. So it is very exciting how a mature brand such as yours is actually addressing those things in a way, in a more slow, not in a slow fashion way, but in a more responsible, in a more responsible approach to the fashion nowadays.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. And so I would like to now to hear and last João Maia, who's telling us a little bit about the shoes and accessories industry, a little bit the reality, and also it is an industry that is changing a lot, that is boosting that is with so many companies and with so many realities? And how are you addressing, how do you see the footwear industry changing? How are you addressing the future?
Hello, Joana. Hello, all that have been in this panel for this discussion. It's hard for me to bring any news and innovation after all these speeches, but I will try to highlight some of the ideas that I consider more important from the footwear perspective. What I can say, we try to address and focus on sustainability for a long time, but 1 year ago we decided to organize a plan or a roadmap for sustainability in the footwear industry. So we organized some working groups between some of our companies, our staff, the staff in the technological center, and we organize it as a plan for the industry. And the plan has some objectives and some areas of activity. One of the things that I would like to highlight here is that sustainability is not only about the planet, it's not only about materials. It's also as related with profits. So we say that sustainability has the 3 Ps. So it's the planet, the people. So we are talking here about people and how important the communities and how we treat our workers, but also about profits. So if companies don't generate profits, they will bankrupt, and in the end, it won't be sustainable. So we have to consider all these 3 vectors of sustainability. So it's important that we think sustainability as a business, because it is as it is. So we need to, our business has to be sustainable. So this is what I would like to highlight, not because the other ones are not important, but it's the only one that no one speaks about it. So it's of course, we talk more about the materials, the impact on the planet, the impact on the people that are engaged, but we have to consider about the profits, and because that's how we generate employment in the country, and that's how we generate employment. It's how we sustain more people engaged in this value chain. This is one of the ideas that I want to bring. The other one is about sustainability is like selling something. We are talking about the consumer. We are talking about sustainability because the consumer are demanding it. If the consumer doesn't demand sustainability, we are not here talking about sustainability. So we need to understand what are the consumer demanding about sustainability. And it's clearly, the consumer wants sustainable products, but the consumer doesn't want to pay more for that. So we need to consider how can we produce more sustainable products, but doesn't decrease at least significantly the price and the cost to manufacture those products. So we have to consider and innovate new ways of manufacturing things, new ways of bringing and picking what the nature gives us, and deliver those as products and finished products to our consumer. So we have to consider as an industry that we are taking things from the nature and then delivering that as products to our consumer. And we have to reduce the impact of these activities. The other thing that usually, so we are usually looking at materials, which is a huge question, the materials that we take from the nature. But we have to consider one thing that usually doesn't fit this question, is about what kind of materials we are using. Those materials have been taken from the nature for our production, or they are sub-products from other human activities. And that's very, very important for us because we are manufacturing 85% of our shoes with leather. And leather has a huge media impact because it's animal related. And everything that is animal related nowadays has a bad image in the consumer. But we have to communicate very, very strongly that the leather that we are using in our shoes are a sub-product of the food industry. No one kills a cow to take their leather. No one kills a goat to take their leather. The leather is a sub-product of the food industry. So the alternative for the hides will be to put them in a garbage with a huge impact in the environment. So we are taking those sub-products and manufacturing something that is useful for our consumer. So, of course, the tanning industry, the guys that take the hides from the food industry and manufacturing the leather that will be used in the shoes, also have a strong impact environment, but they changed a lot during the last decades. Nowadays, when you go to a tannery, the environmental impact of the tannery is very reduced. The water effluents that come out of the tanneries are very controlled. The chemistry that are used are very controlled. They are using new techniques and new natural products to treat the hides. So everything is changing in this material world. But then we also have to take in consideration the durability of the products. And sometimes it's ignored because you pick a pair of shoes and you compare with another one, and you just say the impact of this in the environment is 1 and this is 1.5, but you forget that these shoes will take you'll be used for the double of the time of this one. So and that is very important because usually our products are high quality, and usually our consumer takes them and use them for more time than the fast fashion industry products. So, and that's very important to take in consideration. And the other thing that is important and we usually forget is the distance to the market. So our products usually don't travel a lot all over the world to arrive to our clients and consumer houses. When you look for fast fashion products, usually the materials are manufactured in one part of the world, then they are transported to the other part of the world and come back and go again. So, and that has a huge impact from an environmental point of view. And what I mentioned this is because in the end, sustainability is a communication problem. So we have to measure our impact so we can communicate to our final consumer our footprint. But if we don't have a way to measure, we don't have a way to communicate. And that's why greenwash is emerging, because we don't have a way to measure. If you have a way to measure our environmental impacts and how we are sustainable, we have a way to communicate that impact to our final consumer. I'm from economic background, and we usually have a way of saying this: if I cannot measure, I cannot improve. If I cannot measure something, I cannot say I cannot improve, because in the end, I don't know the ways to improve things, because I don't know if I'm improving or if I'm going back. And that's why I think it's important to have a way to measure our sustainability. And we are not talking about small actions here and then, but we have a way, this product has this environmental impact compared to that product. So the consumer can go to a shop online and say, okay, this product has this kind of impact. I prefer this one and pay a little more for that, but I'm not against that. And that's something that we are trying to work with our technological center and in several European projects to find a way to measure the environmental impact of a product, but something that can fit our needs and fits how we can communicate, and don't be influenced by big brands, because big brands want to measure sustainability on a way that is easier for them, and a way that we are seeing, because for example, Ricardo Preto has mentioned that for him sustainability is something that is just starting. It's harder for them. We understand from his words that it's harder for him because he's already have established his own brand. The guys that are starting, it's easier for them because sustainability is in his DNA. So when we look for a huge European brand or a huge global brand, it's hard for them to assess sustainability. So we have to understand sustainability for all of these points of view, and as we are working as a sector, it's also very hard for us because we have to take sustainability for all of these kind of points of view, because we have small companies, we have big companies, we have companies that are manufacturing, but we also have companies that are brands, others that are components. So we have to work with all of them and trying to push forward this sector.
Absolutely. Thank you, João. It's been great to hear all your words. It's really interesting how different perspectives and different points they actually combine. And we talked about measuring data, which is very important. We talked about reducing waste, about transportation and keeping it more local. And one of the things that we also talked about is about this idea of changing mentalities. And that came on both ends, I would say, on the level of the factories and the people who produce things, the people who manage the brands, they manage the industry, but on the other hand, the consumer, of course, and the consumer who's maybe not always ready to pay more for an object that is produced in a different way, the consumer who still wants to go to a shop and buy something nice and doesn't really, not always needs to have all these worries on his option. Where is this piece coming from? What is the story behind it? And I think I would say there's new consumers that are really considering all these things and are really valuing all these things. I think this consumer exists and it really gives us hope. But of course, there is still a lot to do with the more mainstream consumer. And so I would end this conversation on that note. And how do you think we can impact consumers in a different way? I mean, we've been talking a lot about also the certification and, you know, how the food has made this organic label that is really something that everybody understands. And in a way, fashion has different labels, but there's not a simple idea that, you know, when you buy something with that tag on, it's safe. You are paying more, but your money is being it really translates quality and certification, and it assures you all these important things that we've been talking about. What do you think is a quick, or what is the solution to change and impact the final consumer? That's my question for you. Who wants to go?
I think it's not easy solution, just because the fashion chain is so complex, and there's so many players on that. And but I think technology is the key element. And if we bring like some sort of blockchain to make the entire supply chain more transparent, and then we can find a way, as João said, to measure the impact. He was just saying that I was just thinking some ways, like it'd be amazing if we have on a label of a product some sort of calories, or that people can say, oh, this is the impact of this product in the environment. So I think there's not easy solution, but what we need to do, and I think that's great that we are all here discussing, and this discussion has been growing for the past 5-10 years, is commit for the change. And I know, like big brands, it's very hard for big brands to make the change, but it's our commitment as a small group of thinkers, or as a small group of designers, to make this first move. And the move is everywhere. It's the way we manage our companies, the way we consume the tomatoes we buy in the supermarket, and it's this commitment of the daily basis actions. So yeah, I think technology is a key element to bring this knowledge and educating the people, educating the consumer, because the people that are ahead of the curve, the people that are the trendsetters and the one that makes the decisions first, they already know what sustainability is. They know the importance of the quality, the consuming local. But what we need to do now is bring this message to the masses and to the mainstream. So I think that's the key element of that is bringing technology to make the industry more transparent.
I perfectly agree with Alfredo. one of the things that I consider first step, or one of the big steps, is traceability. So if the consumer can point their smartphone to a QR code or something in the product, and they can open a website and say this product was manufactured here with material coming from there, with a worker coming from there. So as we can have nowadays in food industry, when you go to the supermarket and say these origins come from over there, and this fish travel all over the world. So it's not important for the mass market, but it's important for some opinion leaders that then goes to the social networks and influence the other ones. So if we are able to introduce a traceability program for the fashion industry, I think we can change the world there. But it will be hard to do it with the big brands. But of course, we have to start with the small ones, and then the big ones will join if they see that the consumer demands it.
I would say there's another message here, and I would go to Constança and to Joana, which is actually, it's a really important storytelling. Actually, there's an emotional and there's a story behind your brand and your products that really also is inspirational, and really I think it connects people, and that I think there's an emotional aspect of that is very important for the change that we need to have as a consumer, as a society. And how, I would ask you, how do you think designer brands and independent brands, how is the storytelling and this emotional side, how can this impact change in the future?
Constança, you can go first. Sorry.
I just wanted to go back to the first question, the first point that you made, or the latest one, about the consumers. Just because I totally agree with João and Alfredo, technology is the key, and I do use it. And going back to Ricardo's suggestion of having less colors per season, etc., and I think technology then can have like a strong role there, because you can look at all choices without them being made, and that's what we do. We just present to people digitally all colors without them even existing and without producing. But I also think there's a point here that Ricardo talked about, and I think it's very important when it comes to the consumer, which is, I just feel we have way too many choices right now. And I think it's also very important to consider reducing choices somehow, because this might seem like it doesn't make any sense and it doesn't connect, but I just think like we don't respect each other, and we impose ourselves constantly towards people's opinions and ways of designing and ways of living. So I just think the fact that we have way too many choices of, for instance, one style, let's say a pair of trousers, you can have 4 or 5 colors. I think it's also problematic in a way, and I think it's good that we're like kind of going back to it, because then you have your product that then tells a story. And then going back to your second question about the emotional relationship with in my case, with the pieces and with the fabric, I just think when you create one piece is so special, then it's also good that people see it and they can respect it as you've presented to them, and they can respect what you've designed and what your process was. And when you have way too many choices, when you change a pocket, when you change this, then you're changing the whole design and you're just making it too personal, which is good. But at the same time, I think it's also very important to then reduce the choices. When it comes to fast fashion, I think it's essential, but also in high fashion, I think it's really important. And I think that's another point I wanted to make about your question, your first question on consumers' mentality and changes. I think the less choices will be also something that will help. And yeah, going back to the relationship, I think it's very important. And in my case, it's something very personal, and I really have the need to show to people every thread that I make. And so I think that's what connects people to my brand. And I think each of us, and I think it's very important to have a purpose when you're designing, because there's so many things out there and you just look at so many designers and clothes. And I think it's also good to show why are you there. And I think that emotional relationship that you have with your fabrics, with your process, in Joana's case, it's with the people. In my case, it's as well with the people, but it's also a lot about my relationship with the material and what I feel about him or her or whatever, or about it. So I think it's also, yeah, I think it's very important to show, and I think people want to see more and more what's kind of behind the scenes.
Absolutely. So keeping it real, keeping it focused, and not compromising on what
can be not true. In my case, sometimes it's a lot about illusions and about the reality that doesn't exist somehow. So it doesn't have to be real, but it has to be, you know, what your concept is about.
Absolutely. Thank you. Joana, to finish?
Yeah, no, basically everything that Constança said. I just want to add that regarding the first question to João and Alfredo, and also about traceability and transparency, the thing is, it's really good to have these conversations and to talk about this, because I imagine that all of us that we are here, we really want to change and to make things happen. But the truth is that the big ones don't want to change. And even with consumer demanding, they will just come with new stories about things that don't even exist in sustainability, like greenwashing and things like that. So, I mean, it's kind of like a black hole that pushes to them. That they are the ones who decide, and they don't want to change. So it's kind of sad, actually. It's just a sad memo that I will leave here, remembering her.
But I think all of you gave us an idea, a different idea. I understand what you mean. Of course, the industry as a global machine, it is still really needs to address so many questions in terms of scale, in terms of speed of manufacturing, in terms of procedures, and how do we deal with so many things. That is absolutely true. We're still in the beginning of a very long route, but of course, all of us make a difference. All of us get more people on our side, get more consumers understanding the importance and the value of independent fashion and good quality manufacturing, and this change will happen progressively. And I think the big companies will address that at different stages. It's true that in the beginning was very much greenwashing. Nowadays I see more changes, so I have a bit more hope. But of course, those are the ones, the really big manufacturing and the really big companies. They're the ones who really have the power for change, because they produce so much. So I think the idea of waste and the idea of material, they are really key, but it is also about finding new value to fashion, finding new, understanding the value of our clothes, of the skill and the know-how that is behind a piece of, a jacket and a beautiful shoe, and what does it mean, how it was made. And I think giving the consumer good objects and telling the consumer, showing them different references and different beautiful objects really inspires them and invites them to come into a journey that fashion is not only about wearing a jacket, it's about owning an object that tells, that it is about telling your identity, it is about living in society. And so I hope that this sort of panel will inspire more people, more consumers, more professionals to act better and to find new solutions. Because I think if we are all together and we can all share processes and new perspectives, we can go further and we can go quicker. And I think that is the way. So I'm very happy to have you here. Thank you very much for being with us and sharing your ideas. And see you soon. Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to see you all.